Možemo da počnemo.
Perhaps we can start.
Dobrodošle dame.
And welcome, ladies.
Evo nas na drugom panelu danas.
Now we are here.
Ovaj panel će biti
During our
tema zapravo ovog
second
panela
panel, we
je
will
vezana
be
za radnu snagu.
discussing the issues of
Svi znamo da
workforce.
ko je u
We all
proizvodnji
know,
beri
well,
voća
at
i
least if you
ima
are
zasad
in
veći od
production, producing
20
berry fruits,
hektara,
and you
da
have more than 2
ima
hectares
ozbiljan
of
problem
land,
sa
you
pronalaskom
are
radne
faced with
snage.
serious problem
Jedan od
concerning
ključnih problema
finding
koji nas
workforce.
prati već
One of
poslednjih
the
nekoliko
key
godina,
problems
a to je da
that
ne
we
možemo
have
tako
seen
lako
over the
da
last several
pronađemo
years is
sezonske
that we
radnike
cannot
koji će da nam
easily
pomognu
find
u berbi voća
help,
i
seasonal
neki, da
help,
kažem, slobodno
and
legalan način ih angažujemo
to
u toku
engage
berbe
them
iz tih
legally,
agrotehničkih
actually, to
poslova
hire
na
them for
zasadima. Zato smo
all the
danas
work that
ovu
needs to be
temu
done.
stavili kao
That is
jednu od
why we
vrlo
decided
važnih
to
tema i
have a
ima
look at
mnogo
this topic.
pitanja
It's
za
a
naše
very important
gošće,
topic, and
tako
there
da
are very
bih
many
ja odmah
questions
predstavila
for
svoje
our
paneliste
guests.
i
So I
dala
would
im
like
reč
to
kako bi imali vremena
present my
posle da
panelists
malo i
immediately,
prodiskutujemo na ovu
so
temu.
we have time for
Moji današnji
discussion. My
gosti su Ivana
guests today
Šmigić
are
ispred
Ivana
NALED-a.
Smigic
Dobar dan, Ivana.
from
Ivana
NALED,
Nikolic ispred
Ivana
Ministarstva za rad i
Nikolic from the
zapošljavanje.
Ministry
Dobar
of
dan.
Labor,
I
Employment,
Bojana
Veterans and
Zizovic
Social
ispred
Affairs,
Delta
and
Agrara i
Bojana
HR Delta
Zizovic
Agrara.
from Delta
Drage dame,
Agrar.
hvala vam što ste
She's
danas sa
an
nama
HR
i
expert
ja bih odmah
there.
krenula onako
Dear
sa
ladies, thank you for
pitanjima.
coming here
Krenut ćemo od
today,
Isidore.
and we can
A zašto
start
od
with
Isidore?
questions
Isidora
immediately.
je zaposlena u NALED-u,
Isidora,
a
you
NALED
are
je
employed with the
napravio,
NALED,
da kažem,
that's a
prvu
National
platformu,
Alliance for Local
reformu
Economic
u
Development, and they
samoj
were the
prijavi
first
sezonskih
ones
radnika, pa
to
bih ja baš prvo pitanje
create a
postavila kako
platform
se to
for
izgledalo i kako ste uopšte došli na ideju
registering seasonal
ovakve reforme.
workers. So, how did you come up with this idea? Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. As we have heard in the introduction, seasonal workforce in agriculture is something that is always a hot topic. And what is of interest here is that we started dealing with this issue back in 2015 when the group of fruit producers from Sremska Mitrovica, together with the then mayor and now Minister of Agriculture, recognized NALED as a partner who can help them there, bearing in mind that workers just have a small number of days. It's weather dependent. It happens that they can, they even don't show up, or the weather is bad, and so on. And what we use then, standard contracts of hire, were not adequate, and employers faced the problem that most of them were employed illegally, actually hired illegally. So what we assessed was that about 80 out of 80,000 people, 90% were not registered in any way, which showed that there was not a good form in our legislation for hiring workers legally. So when we started looking for a model back in 2015, and then we went for study visits to Croatia and Hungary. They used the vouchers in Croatia. In Hungary, they had a bit more advanced electronic system, and that is why when we developed this platform, and now we have this kind of a portal for registering seasonal workers daily. The idea was recognized by the government. They, of course, provided support. I believe the colleague from the ministry will talk about it more. But we also had the support by the donors, GIZ. So now we have a highly functioning portal that is very user-friendly. So over the 3.5 years since January 1st, 2019, since then till this very day, we had more than 72,000 workers registered. 660 employers use this portal, so more than 9 million euro was paid in just in taxes and contributions for those workers. And then those taxes and contributions are calculated per day of hiring. So currently they are now 370 dinars per day per laborer. That is a flat rate. So this is something, well, general for starters. Well, thank you very much. I believe Ivana will now tell us about the rights of seasonal workers and the obligations of the employers. Good afternoon from me as well. Isidora said what was the reason for this law on simplified hiring of seasonal workers. It was adopted in June 2018 and was soon in effect, and it is actually being implemented since January 2019. This law allows for hiring workers in a simplified manner. So employ registered seasonal workers through the tax administration portal, and then the relevant registrations go from there. Also, the simplified procedure for tax and contributions, and then this led, of course, to decrease in unregistered labor. Also, there was a significant change concerning who had the right to be employer. When it comes to workers' rights, they have the right to know all the conditions of work, his job description, the amount of the fee they will receive, then health and safety, working hours, rests and breaks. And when such a worker starts working, it is considered that a verbal contract has been concluded. Also, a seasonal worker may ask from the employer to receive a certain certificate about the terms and conditions. The seasonal workers have a right to compensation that is no less than minimum wages, and it is to be paid at the end of the day or within time periods arranged. They may not work longer than 12 hours a day. They have a right to rest for at least half an hour. And also health and safety requirements need to be met. What is important is when they work, they have their service period registered, and meaning they have health insurance and they have pension insurance. A seasonal worker is not deleted from the unemployment registry or in case he receives welfare, then also this welfare is not cancelled. The same goes for any social benefits that they receive. So this compensation does not affect some other benefits that they might be receiving. As for obligations of the employers, one of the basic ones is to familiarize their workers with terms and conditions, to pay tax and contributions for them. And when it comes to health insurance for occupational hazards, it's 2%, and when it comes to contribution for pension and disability insurance, this is 25%, and income tax is 10%. What is important is that they need to register their seasonal workers through the tax administration platform. This was in brief. Thank you, Ivana, for all the information. And now we will end this first round with Bojana. Bojana comes from Delta Agrar. It's a big company, a high number of hectares, large areas under plantations, and a large number of seasonal workers that you hire. So I believe that you have a lot of problems in finding workers, so perhaps your first question might be labor market from your standpoint. Thank you for your question. First of all, I would like to say that we also use this portal, and I would like to thank NALED for initiating that because it made our life easier and also affected unfair competition because a lot of workers would opt to work elsewhere because we always registered our workers and then were not competitive in terms of compensation. As for this law on facilitating hiring workers that is currently implemented only in agriculture, also this made things easier for us. We have now lower costs. If we were to register the workers under some different contract, then we would have to pay 70%. And under this law, as we have heard, there is a flat rate daily, so monthly they cannot be more than 90 euros per laborer per day. So this is a good thing for us. But what is now important for all employers, and the challenge, whether they are small or large, it's a lack of workforce. It's good to have this portal and the legislation in place, but in Serbia there is a shortage of manpower. And I have been working in HR department for 17 years now. This is really my topic. And 10 years ago, if somebody had told me that Serbia will have this problem, this was science fiction. But now it's a reality that we see every day, and we need to find solutions. This year, for instance, we couldn't find sufficient workforce from our country, so we imported workforce, and for our orchard in Zaječar, we imported 250 workers from India. We used this law, we registered them through portal. What is also important is when we import seasonal workers and we use this law, we well, you do not have to go through all the National Employment Service procedures. So you just ensure that they have visa D, and this makes things much, much easier. But let me add to this. I believe that there are many different things there when it comes to importing workers. So perhaps we should share with our listeners what your problems were in the previous period. Feel free, we need to speak and we need to find how to solve the problem.
I will gladly tell you about positive and negative experience that we had. First of all, I would like to say that we have imported 250 workers through two different agencies. We wanted to decrease the risk level, and so we communicated with them all. One agency proved to be without any problems. In India itself, they did a better selection, and then we were a large employer, and we knew that that our workforce comes from quite a different culture. They came from India, so we made an effort to make them comfortable. We imported 5 cooks from India. They prepared meals for our Indian workers. So we did everything possible to make them welcome. However, among those workers, the same as with all other workers, you have some diligent people and you have people who have some hidden agenda. That's why they come. They objected to food, for example, and then they did not want to work. They refused to work for some reason, because they do not like the food or the kind of work they are given to do. And then we faced the problem how to get them back to their country of origin, because you cannot force them to go back. Not even police can do that. So, as it happened, we had a group which went on strike, and we wanted to buy tickets for them to return them to their country of origin, but they ran away because we are the country that is close to Europe and it is not within EU. So we are a good channel for getting to Europe. So the challenges were many, and our recommendation for everybody who would like to import the workforce is to pay attention, to be really careful, and to sign contracts with the agencies. Thank you. And all this was really useful. Now, Isidora, what are the results of the reform? And what are the prospects of expanding the reform within the region? What we see, based on the statistical data, is from the very first year we have the annual growth of foreign workers. In 2019 we had 29,000, and in 2020 we had 30,000. In 2021 we had more foreign workers, and this year we expect to to have more than 30,000 foreign workers, and what we see is that we have more workers from different countries, from India, for example, from Uzbekistan. These two countries are the major sources of workforce for Serbia. However, the expectations that we had were overcome many times. We needed this, and we can do this in a really simple way, although there are many challenges, and we try to promote importation of the workforce in Belgrade and in Serbia. But we need further campaigns, information campaigns in this regard. And what was already mentioned is that we saw the positive results of this reform in the very first year, and then the interest in all the countries of Western Balkans were expressed. So we established cooperation with the governments of Macedonia, Montenegro, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, because they wanted to take over this model and to adjust the model to suit their needs. And for several years now, we are trying to support them, to tell them about our best practice, about the challenges that we met, and we hope that in the region 2 next year we will have the companies that employ people from abroad, and that the employers will find it easier to move between different countries. You represent the Ministry for Employment and Labor, and of course you are familiar with the related legislation. And what do you expect to see in the coming period in agricultural sector? Is there an initiative for a reform, or maybe adoption of a law? I am a layman in this field. In order to improve the safety and security of the local employers who are importing workforce, and to animate local population to get employment in this way. So tell us from your perspective. I want to say, when we started working on the law, our motivation was that we knew that the grey economy and informal employment constitute the main challenge of Serbian economy. Many employees were not registered. Employers complained that this registration procedure is complicated. We had different kinds of contract for engagement of workers, and registering a worker was really expensive, as they complained. So the employees did not have pension insurance, health insurance, and the government could not collect taxes. And the companies incurred higher production costs. Everything was in the gray zone. And that is why we adopted this law. On one hand, to help the employers to simplify the procedure of employing seasonal workers, to simplify the contribution payment procedure, regardless of the level of pay. Of course, we have a minimum wages, but much larger wages can be paid. And also there are other costs that employers have, like costs of meals and accommodation, travel, and so on. But we lacked workforce in Serbia, so we needed to import foreigners, and foreigners can be employed regardless of the law on foreigners. So the employers found it easier to come to the workforce, but we are aware that that is not sufficient. However, we are satisfied with the reform of seasonal employment in agricultural sector. And we saw that there is a need in some other sectors as well, like in construction sector, catering, tourism. They need temporary jobs, seasonal workers. So we need to have a relevant legislation to specify the conditions for employment of foreign peoples. And now we have a draft law in place, and we are just waiting for the new government to be put in place. One more question for Bojana. Can you give us a tip, recommendation based on the experience with the employment of seasonal workers? What positive experience can you tell us about experience with the employment of foreign workers? What tools did you use to keep those workers and ensure that they do the best they can? Yes, I told you about the challenges, but in addition to challenges, we had other things as well. We would not complete our harvest were it not for foreign workers. Are they good harvesters? Oh, yes. We asked for unskilled workers because no special skill was needed, but we saw that some of them were familiar with some crafts and techniques, and they were really willing to help us out. And definitely I can say we cannot do without foreign workers, and we will continue importing them. But we need to be careful when we sign the contracts with employment agencies, because, you know, these agencies comply with the law, but still there are problems. The procedure is time demanding, and we do not to have any negative consequences of employing foreign people, so we will be more careful in selecting the agency, and we would try to burden the agency with more work. I mean, to transfer some work from the companies to the agency, and to see what will happen with workers who want to go back to their country of origin. And now, the time for the audience. Do you have any questions for the ladies here? Because most of you, the producers, meet many problems when the engagement of a workforce is in question. So, please do not hesitate to ask questions.
Yes, sorry, but I will have a question in English. So I have a question about some similarities what I see between Serbian and Latvian seasonal workers legislation. And what we, together with farmers organization, decided that one of the best reason how to get registered these seasonal workers is very low taxes. This means that now we have the system where we have only 15% that we need to pay for workers, seasonal workers. Then we have limitation for 90 days. Let's say, how not possibility to work more as seasonal workers. If they work more, they need to be registered as annual normal workers. And then we decided that it's also possibilities how to get the work for those who are registered as unemployers without losing the unemployer status. Do you have any idea to change this situation and go back to the farmers and prepare it easy this way and facilitating the system of the seasonal workers? Just as examples, and maybe for farmers it could be as a benefits.
What you mentioned, and which is a similarity between our two countries, is the limitations of the legislation. Namely, one worker in Serbia can work only for 180 days a year, and you have this data on the portal, so 180 days is a maximum, but there is this limitation of 120 days is the time period for a single employer to register one worker. So what a colleague from the ministry said is that the new law or the amendment to the law is it is aimed to expand this the application of the law to other sectors, to catering and construction sectors, because we have a great gray zone there, and the draft law did manage to do that, and I hope the new law will respond to all these challenges. And as for the other part of your question, I'm not really sure what you meant by that, so if you can clarify.
Yes, my other part was about taxes to go to lower, because we have only one social taxes, this means that no income taxes, that only 15% is the social payment for those seasonal workers.
Da, znači momentalno
Yes, at this moment, taxes and contributions paid for a seasonal worker are flat rate in fixed amount. But I believe that the new law does not provide for any change in that regard. So it's the minimum taxation and minimum amount of contributions is defined in this reform. We discussed the 2% for health insurance in case of emergency of occupational for occupational health and safety. But at the time being, the law will maintain the calculation of taxes as it is now. First of all, I would like to thank you for the wonderful panel and the conference. My question is because we have a lack of workforce in Serbia, because a lot of our people go abroad to work. Maybe the government has a strategy to maintain our people here in the country, not only in agricultural sector, but in other sectors as well. So maybe local people working for local companies. Maybe colleagues from National Employment Service can best reply, but I believe that now we are developing the strategy to keep young people here in the country to work here. Any other questions? Yes, the lady there. I am the user of the seasonal workers portal. I register my workers regularly. I had quite a problem in the beginning explaining to them that they will not suffer from my registering them. My employers, they go on sick leave at the season of the harvest. And I just had the problems with such workers, and that was a problem that I met. And another problem is the list of payment. I pay my workers on Mondays for the preceding week. And anybody that come to take money for them sign that. Is that a problem? I know that may be a problem, but I cannot really enforce that only my employees can receive money and sign that they have received their pay. What you can say, you are right. It's not possible that people be on sick leave and then get to work elsewhere. And of course, they cannot have disability pension and work. You are right. I believe that there is not enough awareness among our population about the requirements that need to be met. As regards the payment, the disbursement of pay, that's the question for the tax administration. In Portal we had a contact center, but now the tax administration is in charge. We received no complaints about irregularities and such. And I believe we would be informed if there was any problems in that regard. But as for what you asked, you need to contact tax administration, and we have no information about any complaints in this regard. That's what I can tell you.
Hvala.
Thank you.
Još neko?
Any other questions? Yes, I would like to ask a question about foreign workers and their employment. One thing is the law and the procedures. They open up a possibility for something to take place, and something else is implementation. And we saw companies with serious resources, Delta Agrar, their HR department, and they even see challenges. What can you expect from smaller companies, smaller producers? Are we going to wait for the market to select good from bad companies, agencies, or perhaps there is something we can do? So if we are left at the mercy of agency recruiters, then we have no influence over that. And you mentioned, contracts, but imagine a small company with 2 employees or 3, and they have to, deal with such problems. Perhaps this is not a question, but a topic for discussion. Is there anything that we can do to solve such issues? Well, I can say from the employer's standpoint, we were very interested in solving this. So we talked with the Ministry of Labor, and I must say that we have been met with understanding. They even asked us for some proposals and suggestions, but of course it takes time to implement those things and to make a strategy with regard to that. What we as an employer suggested as well at one of those meetings was to form a department, regardless of whether it will be department in the Ministry of Labor or somewhere else, that would deal with all those issues. So an employer needing to import seasonal workers, they would have practically a one-shop stop thing. So they would be able to solve everything in one place and get answers, also all the answers at one place. I would like to say that we are currently working on the new draft law, which will cover construction, tourism, hospitality industry, cleaning buildings, and home help. All the suggestions are more than welcome, so we will think about it. So please provide us with that. The National Employment Service, they have also registered for seasonal workers, so employers can contact the National Employment Service as well. Our colleague here mentioned hiring seasonal workers through agencies. I must say that this law primarily had in mind employers hiring. There is a law on agency in employment and agencies for such type of employees, but we had an idea that employers wanted to hire directly. But we see now, if there is a large company, they need a lot of workers, picking raspberries or blueberries, you need to do everything in a brief period of time, and then you need a lot of workers. So all your suggestions will be considered. It is only after some time of implementing the law you can see what needs to be changed. This law is being implemented. It has been implemented now for 3 years, so we need time to look into all those problems and find solutions. And myself, as a consultant, I can say that we need to promote the National Employment Service. I believe it's a big problem because today there are many producers who also try to do that and failed. I believe that is the institution that needs to be more active here. When we were younger, we all knew what it meant to be, registered with the National Employment Service. That was the first step always when looking for a job. I would like to thank you all. You were great. Thank you for your answers and for all the topics that we discussed, and thank you for your attention. That is all for now.